What's going on, guys? The CTA Prime back here again. Today I am super excited because I got my hands on the all-new 8Bitdo M30 2.4 GHz wireless controllers for the Sega Genesis Mini. Now, as of making this video, these are kind of early units. They are up for pre-order on Amazon, and I will leave links in the description. Retail on these is $25 US a piece. Before we get into the unboxing and testing of these M30 controllers, I do want to get this out of the way. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the controllers that came with the Sega Genesis Mini. These are really great. Sega did an amazing job recreating a classic controller, but as you can see here, they only included the 3-button controllers with the US release of the Sega Genesis Mini. Plus, these aren't wireless. They do have a longer cord than the NES Mini came with, but I prefer using wireless controllers. And these new M30 controllers look like they're going to solve all of our issues here. In the past, I have done a review on the Bluetooth version of the M30, and it's an amazing controller, so I can only imagine that the 2.4 GHz is just as good, if not better. So inside of the box, you're going to receive a controller, a 2.4 GHz USB dongle, and a micro USB cable. Unfortunately, these controllers do not have USB Type-C built in. It uses the old micro USB for charging. Oh yeah, and you'll also get a user manual. So as you can see here, we have the 6-button layout, Start, L and R, plus we have a few function buttons down here at the bottom. Now only one is going to work on the Sega Genesis Mini while it's stock, but I can guarantee you when the console gets hacked, somebody will add functionality to the other 2 buttons. The controller layout is exactly the same as the original Bluetooth version of the M30. I personally like the feel of it. The buttons and D-pad are great. I've had no issues using it on PC or the Raspberry Pi, so I expect this to work just as well. And if we take a look at this versus the stock Genesis Mini controller, which is basically a Sega Genesis controller with USB, you can see that it's much smaller. But it's very easy to get used to, and with the extra buttons and functionality, I think it's definitely worth a try. Setting up the M30 on the Genesis Mini is very easy. Now all I had to do was plug in one of the dongles, turn the controller on, and it was already synced. But if for some reason yours doesn't come synced, there's a sync button on the USB dongle, and all you need to do is hold down the start button on the controller for about 3 seconds, and it'll pair right up. There's a little LED indicator on the top of the controller that'll let you know if it's in sync mode. It'll be rapidly flashing. So I was able to get my hands on 2 of these. I'm just going to set up the next controller for the second player. And this one was also synced right up. So I really didn't have to do anything for the initial setup, but it does come with a user manual if you get stuck. So let's go ahead and see how these things perform. First thing I want to do is start a multiplayer game so I can use the first player controller and second player. I'll go with Virtua Fighter. I think it's down here at the bottom. I'll just get right into the versus mode. Second player's working. First player is also functional. Unfortunately, I don't have anybody to face off against today, and by the way, this was a 3-button configuration game, so we had block, kick, and punch. That's pretty much it, so you're not going to be using the extra 3 buttons on the controller with this game. Moving over to the second player, I really do like the way these buttons and the D-pad feel on this M30. So basically, if you do pick up a couple of these controllers, you're going to have no trouble at all playing multiplayer games. And they've also added functionality for the menu button. We no longer have to hold start on the stock Genesis Mini controller. We can press the menu button, go in here, save, load, exit game, or restart the game. So far so good. The controllers are working great. I'm going to go ahead and get into a single player game. I'll do Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and see how accurate this D-pad is. As for latency, I personally don't notice anything, but I am used to playing emulation with a ton of different controllers, so I've kind of got used to compensating if there is any. So let's go ahead and test it out. Up here a little bit, if I can get mid-air and then come right down on a spring pad using the D-pad itself, I think it's a pretty good controller. The first one is coming up right here. Yeah, I mean, I can get right down on it. It's no problem at all with this controller. Overall, I really do like the feel. I know I mentioned this already, but the buttons do feel really good here, and the D-pad is great. And finally, I did want to test out this 6-button functionality. The original Genesis controller and the one that came with the Sega Genesis Mini does have 3 buttons, but when you're playing Street Fighter, you kind of need 3 extra buttons for kick unless you press start on the original Genesis controller. It'll change all the buttons from low punch, medium punch, high punch, to low kick, medium kick, and a high kick. But since we have the M30 with the 6 buttons, the top buttons will function as low punch, medium punch, high punch, and the lower buttons are low kick, medium kick, and a high kick. And by the way, another reason I test this is to pull off some of these Hadoukens, and it looks like this D-pad is functioning perfectly. And it does have that loosey-goosey feel that the original Genesis controller had, with the pivot in the middle. So overall, I think the new M30 2.4 GHz controllers for the Sega Genesis Mini are absolutely amazing. Now, they do come in at $25 a piece, so if you do want to pick up 2 of them, it's going to be around $50. So by the time it's all said and done, you're going to have about $120 into your Sega Genesis Mini. That's really something you got to consider before purchasing something like this. As I mentioned, the controllers that came with the Genesis Mini are absolutely fine like they are. They're just wired and 3-button units. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you watching. I can definitely recommend the M30 2.4 GHz controllers for your Genesis Mini if you want wireless and a 6-button configuration. I'll leave links to these controllers in the description in case you're interested in picking them up. As making this video, they are up for pre-order, but if you're watching this in the future, they're probably already available. It'd be really cool if you could hit that like button or maybe subscribe to the channel. But like always, thanks for watching.